Well, two of South Africa's largest education sector unions will hold meetings to discuss the possibility of making vaccines mandatory in the workplace in the coming weeks. Some of the largest private school groups in the country have already started to make these vaccinations mandatory for staff, with Curro Holdings giving teachers until the end of the year to get vaccinated. Let's get the view of unions. We're joined tonight by SADTU Secretary General Mugwena Maluleke, as well as Naptosa spokesperson Basil Manuel, and Suid-Afrikaanse Onderwysersunie Chief Executive Klopper. Chris, very good evening to you all. Chris, I hope I was able to put my Free State rearing to good use there in saying the name of your union. On to more important things. Let's begin, gentlemen, and Mugwena, I'll let you have the first bite with how much face-to-face interaction is actually... All right, we don't have Mugwena Maluleke. Pardon me for that bit of a clumsy moment there. Chris, let me begin with you. How much face-to-face interaction is actually happening at schools now, bearing in mind that this is the end of the year and exams would have mostly wrapped up?
As far as I could determine, and we made a survey earlier today, throughout South Africa, and it seems as if less than 10% of learners are attending school at the moment. So in any possible speculation about closing schools, I think the horse is already bolted. I think the question that needs to be answered is, what are we going to do in about a month's time when the schools start again? And the fourth wave is still with us. I think that's going to be a vexing question, and how are we going to deal with that?
And Basil, then that brings into question the issue of mandatory vaccinations and the fact that for a sector that is as populated as education, we need to have a conclusive outcome on this as soon as possible, don't we?
Mbekile, certainly Naptosa agrees that we need to get guidance. We need to get far more leadership than we've had up to now in terms of the mandatory vaccine debate. First of all, nobody is exactly sure what mandatory means and how it differs from compulsory vaccines. And let's get the leadership. Naptosa has surveyed its members, and its members have supported the idea that we need to have mandatory vaccines throughout the country, not for education only, but for all sectors in the country. Education can't be set apart from the rest of the country. If it is about getting people safer, if it is about looking at the next calendar year and a safer schooling year, and then we've got to get everybody vaccinated as soon as possible.
Mugwena Maluleke, you're finally with us now. As I understand it, SADTU has not, as a union, taken a firm position, even though we heard at NEDLAC yesterday that there is buy-in from labour and business as far as mandatory vaccinations. How would you want it to work?
Thank you, and good evening to your viewers, and good evening to my colleagues there. What we're going to do on the 17th and to the 19th, we're going to be talking about this issue. But I must say, without any waste of time, that as an organization, we support the establishment of the task team by the state president in order to allow the people of our country to express their opinions around the issue of mandatory vaccine in the country. As an organization, we've been advocating for vaccination for all the people who are eligible for the vaccination. They should do so because we believe that there is a layer of protection against this particular virus. Our position is very clear. It is that whatever the outcome of the task team, we will be able to support it as long as we are able to differentiate between what is a mandate and what is mandatory. Because if the mandate is going to be, as an employer, I am going to be engaging the unions, and my mandate is that we have to vaccinate every employee that is here. That is not the same as a mandatory vaccination. Is that there's a mandate by the employer to say you have a choice not to be vaccinated, but the mandate is that here I'm availing the facilities, I'm availing the vaccination for you to be vaccinated. So we'll deal with what happens to a person who's not able to vaccinate for whatever reason, because we know that there are those who will have medical reasons not to vaccinate. So NEDLAC has pronounced, and obviously we are going to be discussing this thing, but we need everyone in the country really to take a decision to vaccinate in order to protect the future of our children and the future of this particular country. So whilst we have not taken a decision to say it's mandatory or it's compulsory in education, like Basil is saying, but we have been advocating for vaccination. So we are still advocating for vaccination.
And Chris, let me come to you. In a survey that you had done about the mandatory vaccination conversation, you had found there was a 50-50 split, and that you, from my reading, your thinking was that you think there's still room for persuasion for people who aren't vaccinated. Am I right?
Absolutely correct. You know, with that particular split in our survey, it is difficult for us to go full out for mandatory vaccination. As an organization, we support the principle of vaccination, that the maximum number of people must be vaccinated, the maximum number of learners must be vaccinated, but at this stage, it's still on a voluntary basis. We believe that the state has now to comply with its duty. First of all, that better advocacy programs must be embarked on, and that is to advocate and advise people on what the benefits of vaccination is. And then the other important issue is that we believe that the state has enough room now to maneuver, to refer this particular matter to the Constitutional Court, because this is where it will eventually end, and that the Constitutional Court must proclaim on what is regarded as fair and reasonable and justifiable, you know, in a democratic society.
So, Basil, if not vaccinations being mandatory, what is the best way to keep both staff and people safe? Because we have seen a lot of disruption in the last almost 2 years as a result of the pandemic, incredible amounts of teaching time lost, and people actually dying. So you've lost members as well.
Yeah, Makila, I just want to remind you that in the last 9 months, since we as a group of unions had advocated for vaccines for teachers, we've seen far more stability return to the sector, where closures have been at a minimum, and even teachers falling ill or seriously ill have been at a minimum. But we've always also continued as Naptosa and the others, mind you, to advocate for all those non-pharmaceutical measures, that they mustn't be forgotten, that we still have to do this. But the bottom line is, the world over, all scientists are telling us that it's the vaccine or bust. If we don't vaccinate, we are not going to get on top of this. And the country as a whole, teachers and education workers to a lesser extent, have not vaccinated enough. We know that we've had a very, very good response in the education sector, but it's still not good enough, and we need to be encouraging more. I agree with Chris and Mugwena. Advocacy is important. We've got to start getting more people there, and we've got to also ensure that when we talk about mandatory vaccines, we are all talking with the same understanding, and also that we continue to advocate for the protection of jobs and people. We are not going to be accepting of these sweeping statements that some employers are making, because at the end of the day, we have to protect our people. But protecting them from health crisis is one of the things that we are doing now.
And Mugwena, one of the conversations that is likely to come up further down the line, maybe not happening now, is that you could find a scenario where parents are saying, well, I don't want my vaccinated child to be taught by a vaccinated teacher. So we do need to iron this out.
Well, do I get you correct that a parent may say that I don't want my child to be educated?
Saying the reality of the pandemic is that may very well be one of the scenarios that arise from this. So it's going to be very complicated.
Well, it's going to be complicated, but I wanted to get it very straight. Are you saying that the parent would say, I don't want my child to be taught by a vaccinated teacher or unvaccinated teacher?
I'm saying, oh, pardon me, I'm saying one of the possibilities that we're sitting with here tonight is there may very well be a situation down the line, given how divided people are on the issue of vaccination, where a parent could say, I don't want my child exposed to a teacher who's unvaccinated, or even classmates, who knows?
It's already happening, not in our country, but in other countries already they are beginning to say that, look, if you are not vaccinated, you cannot access public services. Last week, Germany took a decision to say, look, if you are not vaccinated, you are locked down. You are not going to be able to access pharmacy. You are not going to be able to access very critical services for you. In February, they will be talking about mandatory vaccination. So we are heading to that situation where the teachers themselves may say, you are not vaccinated, therefore we don't want to work with you. What is the employer going to do? The employer is going to say, I want to make sure that the workplace is safe in terms of the occupational and the health and safety.
All right, we've lost Mugwena Maluleke as he was making that point. Chris and Basil, I'll let you to have a go at this, both of you. From your union, FEDUSA, when do you expect that you'll have a final decision, Basil?
FEDUSA is mulling over it. You know that a federation is a big family of unions. So all the unions are busy mulling over exactly how they want to approach this. Chris has spoken about his union's position, and I've spoken about mine, and we've been fortunate that we've managed to survey our members already. However, others are still at it, and we hope that in the shortest while. But yesterday, FEDUSA had indicated that it welcomes the decision by NEDLAC and that it is still getting its people organized.
Okay.
So I'm sure shortly we'll have that.
Chris, what about you? When might we be able to get a definitive position from your members?
Well, I think this is an ongoing debate. I don't think it's a debate that will be finalized on any particular time. And I think it evolves, you know, almost from week to week as it progresses. And I think a lot of the influence of the public debate will also affect our members. And of course, what will affect our members also is if the parents start taking a particular stance with regard to vaccination vis-a-vis not vaccinated teachers.
Okay.
And
all right, my thanks to you, gentlemen. We're out of time, sadly. Chris Klopper, Basil Manuel, and Mugwena Maluleke, whom we'd lost and has just come back. Thank you very much for that, gentlemen. This is News.